It's something else interesting. Lots of people discussing the Statue of Liberty being struck by lightning, but no, that's not what this is. The statue was the conduit for a global energy release, which can be seen here. It's not a cloud to ground strike, that's an upward strike, an earth discharge, as you can see the energy forking upwards. Folks, the approximately 2,000 papers we have seen on electromagnetic signals before earthquakes are describing the release of energy from the ground in the days and hours before an earthquake. That's what this is. It was stirred by the low pressure cell driving thunderstorms in the area, yes, but this was an earth strike discharge. The signals are often seen covering hundreds of miles around the epicenter, so this New York City event is well within the range for the epicenter that struck the next day. This is actually what all that pre-seismic signal stuff is about.
So this is a video put out 3 days ago on the 6th by suspicious observers, and I wanted to draw your attention to the title, Record Electroquake. I don't know if I've ever heard of an electroquake before. Also, he speaks kind of fast, and you might have missed that he said you can see it forking in the upward direction. When lightning comes down from the sky, it forks in a downward direction. And I know someone's going to be quick to comment in the comment section, lightning actually strikes from the ground up, in order to try to normalize this and minimize it so they can forget about it and act like, well, that always happens. That's always been that way. Lightning always strikes from the ground up, when actually it comes 99% the way down and draws some energy from the ground before it hits the ground. This is the reverse flow of energy that we're always used to. And I thought the color, the magenta color, was also very interesting. And this kind of relates to one of my analogies. I'll try not to go into it, or maybe I will, about water flowing upwards. Water. Waterfalls that go upwards. Yeah, I think anyone could notice that. Like trees burning on the inside, or lightning going from the ground up. Just an analogy that I've had that if water was flowing uphill for the last 6 years, do you think people would notice? Because I get these people in the comments section that say, there's nothing wrong with people just because they don't notice the trees burning on the inside. They're just not very observant. Or they haven't seen your videos yet, so all they see is burnt wood. And I propose a 5-year-old to 10-year-old could definitely spot the trees burning on the inside if you gave it to them as a logic test, like they do with children when they show them a picture of a room with just general stuff in it, and it's a logical deductive reasoning assessment, and there's a shoe stuck to the ceiling, and the child is supposed to notice the shoe stuck to the ceiling and go, oh, that's not supposed to be there. Those go by the door on the ground. Shoes don't go on the ceiling. I truly believe, not each and every one, but some 5-year-olds could notice if you showed them a picture of the trees burnt on the inside and said, what's wrong with this picture? And I guess 20 to 50% of 10-year-old children would notice and say the tree's not burnt on the outside, only the inside. That's not possible. Like water flowing uphill or trees burning on the inside, lightning going from the ground up is something that people don't like to notice because it dislodges them from their comfort zone. But since most people reported on this, and I'm sure most of you have already seen this, but 99.9% of all people reported on it as if lightning struck the Statue of Liberty. I did see one small local news network describing it as a discharge from the earth or from the Statue of Liberty. All the others reported as the Statue of Liberty being struck by lightning. So I figured lightning coming out of the Statue of Liberty was worthy to throw in the plasma fire / plasma apocalypse catalog and documentary. And here I'll just play the rest of Suspicious Observer's video because he correlates the earthquake that happened that day and this electrical discharge and shows you the statistical improbability of that earthquake happening, and I'll just let him put it in his own words. He's much better at it than me.
Good morning, folks. We have some big stories to cover today. We'll dive into the seismic events of the last day. We'll see another bit of progress in the effects of low magnetic field exposure. And of course, we are starting with the last 24 hours on our star. With the sunspots mostly on the far side, we're enjoying this little break in solar activity. We expect higher levels of flaring to return next week, but right now the sunspots eruptive activity and solar wind are relatively calm. Can't say the same for geophysical activity, however. While the biggest earthquake of the day struck the West Pacific, Mariana Islands again, with continued aftershocks in Taiwan. The most interesting by far was the Northeast United States quake. I'm sure by now we've all heard about the big event in New Jersey, which shook New York City, eastern Pennsylvania, and other nearby locations. So, how rare was it? Well, I pulled the similar sized and larger quakes from the region for the last 124 years. While we've had bigger in Virginia and the Carolinas to the south, as you can see, there really is not a recent precedent for this level of seismicity striking New Jersey or shaking New York City. It's a modern record breaker. But something else interesting. Lots of people discussing the Statue of Liberty being struck by lightning, but no, that's not what this is. The statue was the conduit for a global energy release, which can be seen here. It's not a cloud to ground strike, that's an upward strike, an earth discharge, as you can see the energy forking upwards. Folks, the approximately 2,000 papers we have seen on electromagnetic signals before earthquakes are describing the release of energy from the ground in the days and hours before an earthquake. That's what this is. It was stirred by the low pressure cell driving thunderstorms in the area, yes, but this was an earth strike discharge. The signals are often seen covering hundreds of miles around the epicenter, so this New York City event is well within the range for the epicenter that struck the next day. This is actually what all that pre-seismic signal stuff is about.
You might have also heard suspicious observers mention our exposure to a low magnetic field, which wraps me back around to this video by Skywatch Media titled Earth's Magnetic Field Suddenly Vibrates, Causing an Unexpected Electrical Surge. This correlates plasma fire and the weakening or fluctuating magnetic field and electroquakes. So that weakening and fluctuating magnetic field will create plasma fires and apparently earthquakes. The only thing I'll say is that was made back when we were during a solar minimum. We are now during a solar maximum. So when he explains that fluctuation in the magnetic field usually is associated with solar wind after a solar flare gets shot at the Earth. So when he says solar activity is very rare these days, that's because this video was made during a solar minimum. Solar activity is very common right now, but he explains, he shows you two different graphs. One that's graphing the electrical current in the ground, and another one that graphs the magnetic field. And he shows that when there's this fluctuation in the magnetic field, there is a simultaneous surge of ground current. And he says that this is this fluctuation in the magnetic field and the associated surge of ground current that ends up going with it was unexpected because there wasn't a solar flare hitting us that day. There was not increased solar wind. Thus, this may have been artificially induced, I would say, where they stretch the magnetic flux lines apart and then let them snap back together like a rubber band. And when they go boing like a guitar string, it creates a fluctuation in the magnetic field that creates. I will add to that here that people reported this earthquake in New Jersey. There was a loud sounding like an explosion underground, and then the earthquake came with these pulses that came with in a sequence, like one after another with equal timing and space between the surges of shaking. But the underground explosion sound that happened right before the earthquake may be indicative of something similar like the solar magnetic amplification causative configurator or other such instruments that are used to stretch that magnetic field and let it snap back together like a rubber band, which creates that surge of ground current that can be directed and result in both plasma fires and or earthquakes. It's this surge of ground current. Then the ground current can be directed, just like touching the outside of a plasma lamp when all of those electrical plasma filaments suddenly get attracted to your finger where you're touching the plasma ball lamp. So it is when you touch the earth with a grounding mechanism, it can direct that energy either to one house, and Tesla said, I can direct the power of the sun to anywhere on Earth. The solar magnetic amplification causative configurator is said to be able to create the effects of a solar flare and control the timing, intensity, duration, and location of those effects of a solar flare, like the Carrington event, on a push button machine, and you can decide how long it lasts, how intense it is, where it hits, and you can make it hit one house but not the next, and then this house but not that house, this house but not that house, which is what we saw in a lot of these fires like Paradise. That's why I say this is happening naturally as part of the pole shift with the weakening magnetic field. There's a fluctuation in the magnetic field more often because it's weaker. And every time there is a fluctuation in the magnetic field, there's always a surge of ground current that goes with it. So when he titles this, Earth's magnetic field suddenly vibrates, causing an unexpected electrical surge, I would disagree. Every time the Earth's magnetic field vibrates, it creates an electrical surge. The electrical surge is not unexpected. When the magnetic field vibrates, what is unexpected at this time in this video when he's making this is why the magnetic field fluctuated and vibrated in the first place. That's what's unexpected. There was no solar wind causing it. What caused the magnetic field to fluctuate the way it did? Possibly it was artificially induced through technology.
In recent months, the Earth's magnetic field has been very quiet due to a solar minimum, which has been described as one of the deepest in the past century. Geomagnetic storms have become something of a rarity these days, as solar activity has become almost non-existent. Then something occurred on June the 23rd that had solar scientists scratching their heads, as instruments in the UK suddenly registered a magnetic anomaly. The local magnetic field began to oscillate with a continuous wave that rippled around the globe, lasting for more than 30 minutes. So what could have caused an unexpected electrical disturbance to take place? There was no solar or geomagnetic storm to cause the disturbance. Nothing was showing on the NOAA satellites for June the 23rd that would indicate an uptick in solar wind speed. Indeed, there was nothing showing that could explain the disturbance. So what could be the cause of a sudden electrical surge that was strong enough to vibrate around the world? In the Lofoten Islands of Norway, a similar magnetic anomaly was detected on the magnometer. According to observations, the anomaly was quite spectacular. The magnetic field was swinging back and forth by about 1/3 of a degree. Ground currents were also detected with an almost identical 10-minute period. This is the second time in less than 6 months that an unexpected electrical surge and magnetic anomaly has been reported from Norway. On January the 6th of this year, sudden electrical currents started flowing, creating strong variations in the ground currents and the local magnetic field. The magnetic disturbance was captured by sensors at the Polar Light Center Observatory in Lofoten, Norway. Scientists described it as some type of a shock wave. It came as a total surprise. 15 minutes prior to the electrical surge on January the 7th, a NASA spacecraft recorded anomalies in the interplanetary magnetic fields situated near Earth, accompanied by an increase in solar wind density 5 times greater than usual. Scientists call the phenomenon strange, suspecting that the Earth may have crossed through some fold in the heliospheric current sheet. What was even more peculiar was that the electrical current flowing through the ground managed to electrify the sky with unexpected vivid auroras. It is uncertain as to the exact cause of this magnetic anomaly, but space scientists often refer to the phenomenon as a pulsation being continuous, where fluttering waves flank the Earth's magnetosphere even in the quiet moments of solar minimum, where waves can still be heard like a pin dropping in a room void of activity. On the day of June 23rd, the Earth's magnetic field was so quiet that the ripple was heard all across the world. The global network of magnetic observatories picked up wave activity from Hawaii to China to the Arctic Circle. Even in Antarctica, there was a sense that something unusual had occurred with the magnetic field. The continuous pulsations, referred to as PC waves.
Okay, I'm just going to leave this link in the description so you can watch the rest of it. This is about the end of this part of the presentation where I noticed this time, something I never noticed when watching this video, that he said that this NASA observatory detected an anomaly in the interplanetary magnetic field, not the Earth's magnetic field, in the interplanetary magnetics, and that the solar wind suddenly jumped up to 5 times the speed that it was. These two things correlate with this idea of a machine called a solar magnetic amplification causative configurator, SMACC, SMAC, where those configurations of environmental circumstances that cause this solar magnetic connection to happen between the sun and the earth can be amplified. And so just to wrap this up, this is what we saw. Notice how the lightning forks going in the upward direction. And in looking for some images, I found an older image from 4 years ago where it says Lady Liberty struck by lightning. Notice the lightning is forking in the downward direction, which is what lightning normally does. It forks in the direction that it's moving, and it's normally moving from the sky to the ground. In this case, it was moving from the ground up through. Maybe like the plasma lamp where you can put your finger on it and draw all those electrical filaments to your finger. They put it right out the end of Lady Liberty's torch. Maybe it was intentional, maybe not. That thing is a metallic skeleton inside that statue. It's not all concrete. It's mostly a big metal skeleton inside that would work as an antenna.